Okay. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to wherever you may be joining us in the world right now. Welcome to the Payoneer 24-hour digital summit, to our third session of the day. It's currently 6 p.m. in Australia here, which means we are 3 hours into our 24-hour marathon of a virtual summit. My name is Remy Janssens, and I am the Head of Customer Success for Payoneer Australia. And I'm delighted to be hosting today's discussion on how to scale on marketplaces worldwide. I'm excited about this session because in my role, I'm lucky enough to see hundreds of Payoneer customers here in Australia and New Zealand who are taking that plunge firsthand and connecting to new marketplaces, both domestically and globally, and seeing the success that comes from that step. 52% of all online retail sales come from marketplaces. So it goes without saying that it's a vital part to a successful online retail strategy, which is why I'm very excited to introduce today's panel, who can help demystify some of the challenges and share some top tips. So to tackle today's conversation, we are joined by Apurva, who is the Chief Development Officer at Sendle, Darren, who is the GM and Head of E-commerce at CEVA Logistics, Frank, who is the co-founder of Comestri, and Paul, co-founder of Merchant Spring. Now, I'd like to hand it over to our panelists to give an introduction. And Apurva, you're at the top of my list, so if you could introduce us to yourself and tell us a little bit about Sendle.
Sure. So look, thanks for the brief intro, Remy. As Remy pointed out, I look after expansion and partnerships for Sendle, and Sendle is one of the fastest growing carbon neutral SMB focused courier in the world, in fact. And we make e-commerce shipping simple, affordable, and reliable for SMB e-commerce merchants. Our focus predominantly is to demystify, as Remy said earlier on, demystify the complexities of shipping that traditional couriers, age-old couriers, tend to complicate and make shipping almost a science. Whereas, in the modern day context, we believe shipping should be a simple black box. E-commerce merchants, especially starting out into their e-commerce journey, shouldn't have to worry about. They should just be able to plug it, set it, and forget it. So that's where Sendle comes in. Would love to chat a little bit more about later in the, as part of the discussion about why, Sendle plays a big role in the marketplaces space. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Apurva. And maybe sticking with the kind of shipping and logistics space, it's a nice segue for Darren to introduce us from CEVA.
Yeah, thanks, Remy. My name is Darren Kowalski. I'm the General Manager and Head of E-commerce, Cross-Border and Omnichannel at CEVA Logistics. CEVA is part of the CMA CGM group. It's quite a sizable company, about 100,000 staff in 160 countries, 700 offices globally. We specialize in e-commerce, contract logistics, freight management and warehouse automation and robotics. I guess, my background has always been in e-commerce and as well as management consulting, but obviously forging ahead with the e-commerce for Australia and New Zealand. That's the cluster that I look after. I have counterparts in other parts of the world that look after their respective regions for e-commerce. But I think relevant to this panel is obviously marketplaces and where e-commerce fits in there. Obviously, it's a strong kind of focus, obviously over the last few years, but particularly coming off the back of COVID and I guess the digital transformation that a lot of companies are having in this period. Look forward to chatting further on some of the, I guess, topics we're going to run through.
Awesome, thanks, Darren. Paul, you're next to Darren on my screen. Over to you.
Hey guys, thank you for having me. Great to be here. My name is Paul. I'm the founder of Merchant Spring. We are a 3-year-old startup who are all about helping sellers drive more sales on marketplaces globally. So specifically, we've got a core SaaS product called Marketplace Manager, which we really see as the next generation marketplace insights and analytics platform, allowing you to connect multiple marketplace accounts across multiple platforms, across multiple regions, all into a single dashboard and workspace. So, that's what we do. We work with a whole range of sellers across the US, Europe, and Australia. And we're always looking for more sellers to give our tool a try. So feel free to head to our website, merchantspring.io, for a 14-day completely obligation-free trial. So that was a little spiel I tacked in there in the end. It'll be all, I promise.
No, it's good because I know you're going to be adding a bulk to this conversation with the data and insights that you get from Merchant Spring. So thank you, Paul. And last, Frank, over to you at Comestri.
Hi, Remy. Thanks again. Great to be here. I'm one of the co-founders of Comestri. We're a 12-year-old startup. Is in Sydney, Australia, Hong Kong, and UK. And we've developed a cloud-based platform called Comestri to help manage e-commerce data and orchestrate that data across e-commerce websites and marketplaces. It helps brands and retailers manage their e-commerce operations and help them sell more products every day. Comestri has pre-built channels and integrations with over 40 Australian and international channels. As I mentioned, both e-commerce marketplaces and drop ship, both domestically and internationally. And it's used to help manage and improve data quality to drive more sales, flexibility to control multiple sales channels, optimize order fulfillment from multiple inventory locations, lower operational costs, but most importantly, deliver that all-round exceptional customer experience that is being demanded by consumers today. But looking forward to this chat today and helping brands and retailers understand marketplaces both domestically and internationally.
Fantastic. And to that point, Frank, I think let's dive straight in. So I have a series of questions. And I think what we'll do for the first round is I'd like to ask the same question to each four of you. And Frank, I might start with you to address the first one, just because I think the Comestri platform lends itself, really to how sellers can tap into scalability through marketplaces. So I guess the question to you and to the wider panel, what would some of the top reasons be that you'd suggest as to why it's important to have a marketplace strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question, Remy. And my thinking on that is three key reasons. First and foremost, particularly for brands, it's to protect the brand. Because if you don't go on a marketplace, somebody else will. Somebody else is going to steal that space and hopefully either properly represent your brand or misrepresent your brand. So first and foremost, protect the brand. Secondly, the strategy would be to generate brand awareness. There's a lot of visitors, there's a lot of buyers that go to marketplaces, and it's a great place to create that brand awareness and hopefully make people aware that you have a product of interest. And third and foremost, which I think is the pot of gold, is to generate sales. So they're the three key reasons I think brands and retailers should consider a marketplace strategy.
No, thanks, Frank. And while we're on that, I guess that aspect, I might pivot to you, Paul, because you obviously, through the Merchant Spring platform, see the benefit of when a brand does have a great strategy. So from your perspective, why do you see it as being important?
Yeah, look, I think I agree with everyone Frank mentioned already, but the way I talk to our customers about it is, there's very few sales channels that are in growth these days other than e-commerce. So it's very hard to ignore e-commerce. Within e-commerce, the simple reality is, I think you mentioned a figure of 55% share of marketplaces. I mean, that, our view is that's probably on the low end. Some markets it's as high as 65, touching 70. So actually, and growing as a share. So it's really hard to win in e-commerce without being present on marketplaces. And to Frank's point, someone else will be there if you're not. The other big reason here is really around incrementality. So, 9 out of 10, when we look at our customers and say, right, who are they attracting through their own website versus marketplaces? We find that the marketplace audience is very, very incremental to their existing customer base. So very little cannibalization. And the benefit of marketplaces, and this is part of the reason why you tend to pay them commission, is their audience is already there, right? So you're not going on a long campaign of building up your SEO ranking or spending a lot of money on Google Ads. Part of the benefit is the audience is already there and it's large, and you can tap into it.
Exactly. I think, and using Comestri, you publish it once and you can sell everywhere. Darren, from your perspective on the logistics and the 3PL side, your views around why the marketplace strategy is important.
Yeah, look, I mean, just on the marketplace alone, if we just look at the background of it, someone like Amazon, they began in '94. Their marketplace sales in particular continue to represent, a significant portion of their total sales. Here we are kind of decades later and their marketplace model is still going strong. I guess globally, there's marketplaces in almost every region, which continue to validate the growth and longevity of the business model. In Australia, every year we hear praises for the recent launches of marketplaces, Kogan calling it a transformational step, or Catch saying that it turbocharges their sales. It's something that we're seeing significant year-on-year growth with, and marketplaces just dominating the e-commerce market. It's something that definitely can't be denied or disregarded from any marketing strategy. Obviously, logistics is a key part of that. I think, if we look at the three sides of a given marketplace, from the consumer side, they're hunting for the best deals and the convenience of a one-stop shop. I think from the marketplace side, there's more e-commerce companies launching their own marketplaces, each year, and the opportunity to expand for them to do so in a very capital light way. It efficiently scales their business. And most importantly, for the seller side, it's more sales to a larger customer base that they might otherwise not have access to, and create that brand awareness. But obviously a key part of that engine, if you like, is the logistics side, which some of those marketplaces are a bit more kind of complicated than domestic marketplaces. Some of them command that the stock reside in country. It's just a case of setting up that logistics structure correctly in order to tap into those marketplaces. Obviously, the more the better, but it really needs to be strategically set up logistically to lend itself to operating in as many markets as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Especially when marketplaces pride themselves on delivering a great customer experience through speed, having that logistics partner is equivalent in value and need. Aperva, I haven't touched on you for this question. Thoughts on the importance of a marketplace strategy?
Sure, Remy. So look, Frank, Darren, and Paul all made some really great points about why we need to be there and why merchants should be thinking about the marketplace piece. I'm going to try and bring a little bit of an insight around why smaller and merchants that are just starting out should actually take marketplaces more seriously. I know quite a few of them do that already, but we also hear about merchants who actually try going their own way by starting their own their own store first and then struggling through that valley of death period. What's really interesting is marketplaces serve as a great mall-like equivalent in the physical world, where you get default footfall for the products and allows your products to have great searchability in a platform where in the early days when you're just starting out and let's say buyers are not aware of your brand yet, they're not familiar with your product, you're still in the trust building phase, marketplaces can be a great place for smaller businesses to start building that brand and trust, and then gradually, start to build their brand outside of the marketplace itself. So it's a very important ignition point for any small business that's starting out. Of course, for larger brands, as Frank said, if you're going to be quiet on a marketplace, somebody else will speak for you. So, to allow that void to be taken by someone else is the big pitfall. So for larger brands, you just have to be there. For smaller brands, if you don't want to feel lonely and small, this is the great place for you to start off, get some traction, and then figure out the right strategy for you as you go forward.
Such a good point, Apurva. And you'll quickly realize from the feedback from your customers in the marketplace whether or not it resonates correctly with that market for whatever reason it may be.
Exactly.
Stitching time saves 9. Okay, so Paul, I might pivot to you for question number 2 here. This is around, I guess, what are some of the key marketplaces that a seller should consider? And perhaps more broadly, what are some of the not so known marketplaces, with the kind of borderless world that we're living in now, that a seller could potentially consider?
Sure. Look, obviously the world is a big place, and the first thing I'd say is, marketplaces are popping up almost on a daily basis. You look at, the top 100. Clearly there's hundreds, if not thousands, of marketplaces. The top 100, more than 50 of them didn't even exist 10 years ago. So that just speaks to sort of the evolution in this space, right? Now, clearly, if you exclude, mainland China, really big platforms like, Amazon, eBay, Lazada, Shopee in Southeast Asia, they're some of the bigger platforms, and that's really useful, obviously, if you are already familiar with one of these platforms in a particular country to then expand to another country. There's some familiarity there. But, it's probably also worth distinguishing between the two types of marketplaces that we often see. There are the open marketplaces. Amazon, eBay are part of that. That tend to be the largest, attract the largest audience, the largest catalog, but virtually they're open to every single seller that wants to sell there, which also means competition is very great. Then on the other hand, you have curated marketplaces. You need to be approved on these marketplaces as a seller, and many sellers get rejected. The benefit of actually getting onto those sellers is actually you'll find that your sales and ROI can actually outperform some of the bigger open marketplaces, and that's certainly true. We find that here in Australia with some of our customers continually posting, stronger results on some of the smaller but curated marketplaces, whether it be the Iconic or Catch or the like. But we see that in other markets too. So, for example, in Europe, yes, eBay and Amazon very strong in most Western European countries, but you've got some really other strong marketplaces like in France, Cdiscount, Darty, or in Germany, Otto, and you'll find that almost on a country by country basis, you'll have these, more curated marketplaces that I think offer real opportunities for sellers to drive incremental sales.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome point, Paul. I might ask Frank in a similar vein. Frank, you obviously through Comestri see dozens of marketplace integrations through your platform. What are some of the ones we should know about? Any hidden gems and emerging markets that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think I don't want to mention any specific marketplaces. I think there's different marketplaces for certain categories. You've got marketplaces that specialize in home furnishings, others that specialize in fashion. I think the other consideration is who are their audiences and who are their client bases. Are their audiences bargain hunters? Are they outlet type of marketplaces? If you look at the eBay, it was well known for selling secondhand merchandise, and now they're trying to change that image to selling full priced items. So they're the type of things. Paul mentioned a very interesting point about the type of marketplaces, the curated marketplaces, which is more often referred to as drop ship. The questions there is who owns a customer, who provides a customer service, who is a merchant of record, like, who takes the payment, who carries that payment through, who's going to be responsible for returns, and what type of packaging and documentation needs to be provided. And all those things could impact your business, could impact the supply chain and fulfillment requirements. So I don't think it's an easy answer. I think there's a lot of more questions to come out when you want to answer that question, which are the marketplaces and to go for and which ones you don't want to go for.
Yep, that's a good point. Darren, any thoughts on the question in terms of marketplaces to consider?
Yeah, look, I think, Paul and Frank have obviously raised some very good points there. I think, generally speaking, I would say any marketplace that suits the products or the types of products in those major marketplaces. I would say, we're finding quite a few clients, they get comfortable in their respective market without thinking, I guess, more broadly to the larger, worldwide marketplaces that exist, in Europe and Asia and the US and even Latin America. Some of the sizes of those marketplaces are quite shocking in their size, just infinitely larger, I guess a bit more mature in their marketplaces and offering. The caveat here obviously being, the correct setup for the respective kind of marketplace seller. The logistics and the IT side really has to be in place in order for that to scale correctly. It's particularly challenging, if there's a given client running their own DC in, let's say, Australia, or they're with a respective 3PL that's very domestic focused. It kind of creates a bit of stifling in their growth opportunities by just having that structure in place. I guess something with CEVA that's been quite a focus for us is that investment in that technology and in that e-commerce. So looking at the marketplace integrations, we integrate with about 150 global online sales channels. They make use of the CEVA fulfillment solutions at the same time by having all that inventory under one roof. And we have kind of, if you like, a war chest of e-commerce enabler tools to deploy clients, very easily, very rapidly and globally. One of the things we have is called Rapid E-commerce Deployment, or RED, to get a client up and running extremely quickly. We leverage off our 3PL sites globally, where our global footprint sits at about 8.5 million square meters, 1.2 million square meters in Australia and New Zealand. And, some of these facilities, having robotics and whatnot to really scale up the operations accordingly. And, a lot of that's built around somewhat of the nucleus, which is a unified WMS that can handle the transport management systems for the first mile, last mile, returns, hundreds of carriers and carriers globally in their respective regions. And, if that doesn't suit, we have something called cross-border e-commerce and freight management and brokerage services to really, if they want to kind of keep the goods in country but ship internationally for a marketplace that might not require goods in country, well, then that's another solution that we have. But really that war chest of enabler tools specifically built around, e-commerce marketplaces.
Yeah, it's such a good point, Darren, and especially, to the point where you look at a market like India and Amazon that's opened up its cross-border program, which is fantastic, but there still comes challenges, for that particular region about having an importer of record, and there's kind of red tape involved with potential new markets you want to explore. So I think having a consulting partner, or a partner, like yourself, that can also help with the consulting aspect of it, can overcome a lot of hurdles if you want to get something done quickly. Apurva, like your views on the topic in terms of markets that people should potentially consider.
Yeah, look, I think everyone on the panel have made some really valid points. The one thing that I just like to add to that is, I've always wondered what is the reason why a merchant should actually stay away from a marketplace. Because if getting the maximum amount of sales is part of building your brand and getting the maximum amount of sales is part of why you do retail, I guess the question is more around quickly getting to a brand alignment with the marketplace, a regional or a market alignment. So, which markets do you want to sell in? So if North America, Europe, or, parts of Southeast Asia are markets where your product has some kind of demand, if those are the markets you want to go after, quickly identify those markets. Then once you've identified the market, identify the key marketplaces or the top 5, top 10 marketplaces that are relevant to the product that you're selling. And then, spend some time investing and identifying, there are several aggregator applications out there that allow you to list on multiple marketplaces in one go, and that allow you to test your strategies, test these marketplaces, and then maybe a year or so from then, really identify which are the winning marketplaces for you and which are the ones that are too complicated to really play on, and then really go after that. right? So, I fully appreciate there would be certain categories that do not have that mass appeal. But at the same time, for most of the categories like fashion, electronics, and so on, I guess the question should be, why should you even keep yourself back from any of the marketplaces, right? I don't really see a reason why sellers would pick one over the other when you can have maximum visibility by creating your store on every marketplace possible.
Yep, and there's some good tools to help you do that for sure. I guess a follow-up to that question is around countries, and in particular, how can we have some strategies around which countries to sell in? And I know that you've kind of all spoken about it previously. Paul, there was one particular question that just came up in the chat here. You were talking about some of those different marketplaces earlier, in Southeast Asia and the likes. Would you be able to just talk about some of the countries and some of the top marketplaces perhaps in those countries?
Sure. Yeah. Look, we actually did our own research on this a couple of months ago. So I've got quite an extensive list here, and I'll be happy to sort of share that with people after. But just to give you a sense. So obviously in Southeast Asia, we've got Shopee and Lazada being present across most markets there. But then, within different markets, like take, for example, Indonesia, which is a massive market. There's some really big marketplaces like Tokopedia and Bulaplak that are domestic only, but really, really strong. India right now is a really interesting space. Not, as you mentioned already, not easily to enter as a foreign seller, but lots of marketplaces really fighting it out there at the moment. Amazon's risen to the top, but Flipkart, Snapdeal, even others like Club Factory, or maybe not so much, but some of the others remain pretty big. Then I mentioned Europe, so there's some really big marketplaces. So, for example, Germany, outside of eBay and Amazon, you've got a marketplace called Real and Otto. And then France, FNAC is actually the largest. They also operate in Spain. Cdiscount and Darty, and then in the US, obviously, Walmart is outside eBay and Amazon. Walmart is really a hot topic and really making some really strong inroads with its own marketplace presence. So I hope that helps.
Paul, that's amazing. What a great coverage of the country question there. It's just worth pointing out, maybe a little plug for Payoneer here, but on the India side, we have just launched a program where we can actually support sellers that are interested in selling into Amazon India's cross-border program, connecting them with our partner who are looking after the importer of record piece as well. So happy to share any information around that for sellers interested in selling on Amazon India. I think you've done such a good job, Paul, of the countries question there. I might jump to our next question for our other panelists, which is around some of the challenges. And we've certainly spoken a little bit on the logistics side. Frank, I was keen to hear your thoughts from a challenges perspective, because Comestri as a platform can help connect you into so many new marketplaces. What would be some of the pain points that perhaps you see through sellers expanding into new markets?
It's a great question, Remy. I think the discussion around marketplaces, people think it's an easy process. It's a set and forget, and unfortunately, it's far from the truth, because marketplaces are just like a retail store or a e-commerce store. You've got to work it to make it successful. So, the merchandising of the products, the marketing of the products, and optimizing the information is very critical. So, talking about challenges, a lot of these marketplaces, the product titles, the product information is so critical to being successful. Images, attributes. If you look at eBay, item specifics is becoming more and more critical to help the search results. Amazon requires additional information like featured list, and then the description itself. And the panel here's talked about overseas marketplaces and why not just try any marketplace. I think the key thing that needs to be remembered is that listing the products is a challenge in its own right. Getting the product to the consumer in an acceptable delivery time, fulfillment time is another challenge. And some of these marketplaces do put down specific delivery times, which should be adhered to. But I think the element that always gets forgotten is what happens with returns and refunds. If you just look at fashion, for example, guaranteed you're going to have returns and refunds. And in some countries, who's going to bear the costs? Where does that return occur? In China, there was a big rush towards Tmall many years ago, and getting the fashion items into China was the easy part, but then you couldn't get the products back. So there's some of the challenges I think brands and retailers need to really think about if they're going to venture off into not just domestic marketplaces, but more important, overseas global marketplaces.
No, thank you, Frank. And you touched on one very interesting point there, which I'm glad you didn't speak too much about, logistics, because I wanted to ask Darren, I dare say, Darren, you might have other challenges you wanted to speak about, but would logistics perhaps be one of them when scaling into new marketplaces?
Yeah, look, I mean, part of what CEVA's really focused on, for example, is, we like to think we've removed a lot of the heavy lifting in the regard of, be strategically placed at what we call the end of runway, close to ports or carrier DC hubs. We like to place ourselves where the e-commerce marketplaces are very strong. Some of the significant e-commerce marketplaces are actually CEVA clients. So we have a very strong presence in those countries. I think we're currently operating in excess of 20 different countries for e-commerce and omni-channel clients at present. Obviously, that's growing as our footprint increases and those markets, new markets emerge and mature. I think quite a bit of it, really challenges the status quo, where we like to have clients rethink the e-commerce world and that it's somewhat of a flat world, but only if the logistics partner is global and is tech savvy and is able to really scale them. We find a lot of clients kind of think it's easier than it actually is. And we've built out a lot of that, nucleus or engine of the machine, off the back of some of our larger e-commerce and marketplace clients, where we've got carrier connectivity, marketplace connectivity. We can handle the B2B, B2C, automation, integration, and that whole kind of suite has really put us in that position to do that. Now, what we find is some clients who aren't ready for that, or they're with their traditional 3PL, or they're handling it themselves. It's quite a journey for them, and it obviously might elongate the timeline more than they anticipate deployment in new markets and new marketplaces. And to Frank's point, they might find one element is an easy part, and then other parts are more challenging. We've really kind of cut through those challenges for them, just off the back of our history and our experience. But look, some people like to learn the hard way. Others like to really plan it from the outset and get it right, so they can scale a bit more effortlessly.
But that's such a good point. If you can leverage off the experience of a business like CEVA that's done it for large scale enterprise clients, and that knowledge can be passed on to any retailer, it's an amazing thing to look into. Aperva, your thoughts on challenges?
Sure. Look, again, I'll try and speak for the small business side of things, and really try and focus on some of the smaller merchants and the challenges they typically face when they're thinking of expanding into marketplaces, or even for that matter, trying out. And a bit of my background has been in working and building some of the some of the marketplaces like Snapdeal, Catch, and eBay. So there is a piece around some of that experience that I want to share. Some of the common mistakes that smaller businesses tend to make is around not fully understanding the fees and the costs and the commissions that that are really involved in their categories. That sometimes ends up becoming a rude shock somewhere down the line. Like really not understanding the policies of the marketplace, as Frank was kind of pointing out. It's easier said than done to scale across all marketplaces. So I know I said that in my previous response, but at the same time, Frank's absolutely right. Each marketplace has their own policies, have very hard rules that they kind of enforce and make sure that the buying and selling experience is of high quality. And more often than not, the sellers are the ones who are taken to task for any experience that doesn't live up to the standard. So sellers are always benefited by understanding deeply what those rules of engagement are. There are enough resources out there for every marketplace or every major marketplace for you to learn that, but at the same time, spending time before you decide on those marketplaces is quite important. And one of the things that I personally experienced when I used to be a seller on a marketplace myself, and I used to have a few of my stores on a marketplace, was actually underestimating the amount of communication and the infrastructure needed to really, respond to emails and questions and issues merchants and buyers are having, when they're buying from you. If you're a small business, if you're a large business, it doesn't really matter. The e-commerce is a place where people feel comfortable when they ask questions, get their responses. Often, in different categories, there are more or less questions, but it's a high engagement, business, and people often really don't pay attention to that, and they're later surprised by how much that can be either frustrating or it can be frustrating for the buyers. So it's important to go into it with your eyes open that communication will be a key part of this, and having a strategy and planning for that as you think about scaling into marketplaces will be really important. Not taking care of some of these points can result in root shocks, and as kind of Darren said, some people like learning it the hard way, some people like prepping for it better. It totally depends on how risk averse you are as a person or as a team.
Such a good point. And Frank, sorry to add to that.
Yeah, just one more point that Apurva's quite rightly mentioned is that the questions and the customer service is critical, and a lot of these queries from consumers come in before the purchase is done, and you have to work very hard to win that sale. And if you decide to take a lackluster approach to responding to these emails, some of these marketplaces are measuring your feedback mechanism and allowing the consumers to provide feedback. And if you get into that negative spiral because you haven't taken into account the customer service, your marketplace strategy is going to fail. So a lot of people underestimate the importance of customer service, and that's a very big challenge. A lot of merchants underestimate and fail miserably on marketplaces.
It's a very good takeaway, and I think that's it's going to help a lot of people joining today hopefully get right when they enter a new market. So thanks for bringing it up. We've got just under 10 minutes left, team, so I wanted to focus on a couple of individual questions, if that's okay with each of you. I'll start with perhaps Paul. Looking at kind of metrics, and obviously you have a great source of knowledge through Merchant Spring, but what are some of the metrics that are useful when managing marketplace channels?
Sure. No, look, it's interesting when you mention the word metrics, because a lot of marketplaces look at the world a little bit differently. So even just getting your head around, how does eBay look at the world? How does Sketch look at the world? How does Amazon do it, or Lazada? That's kind of a challenge in itself. But certainly, the things that, we've built our tool around that we deem to be the most important, actually, number one is actually, taking on board Frank's point, right? Which is all about, it's actually not about sales. It is about seller health and how well you are performing for the customer, whether it's around shipment or customer response and all of that. If your seller health rating, and these have different sort of terminology in different marketplaces, but if you're standing with the marketplace, from a customer point of view, is not top notch, then everything else becomes so much harder in terms of, a participation in marketing events or search ranking organically and the like. So, that actually becomes the most important metric to look at first, seller health. And there's lots of different sort of sub metrics underneath that, right? The second thing that you then want to look at really is around sales, right? So, obviously makes sense, but particularly if you're trading across marketplaces, you want to have a really good view of, what is really working where, so that you can put specific strategies in place. So, for example, what products are selling well on which marketplaces? What time of the week are they selling? And what are sort of price points and order values you're getting out of that? And then, the two other ones, obviously I could call out hundreds, but the other one, clearly is profitability, right? There are many, many sellers that drive lots of GMV, but actually when everything is said and done and the dust settles, actually they're losing money, right? And we're all just being busy fools. I'm assuming that most marketplace sellers, if not all, are out there to make profit. So really understanding your profit at a bottom line level, after all the marketplace commissions, all the advertising, all your COGS, even your shipment cost, everything's taken into account. Where are you making money, right? And the ability to compare that across marketplaces is obviously useful because it allows you to work out what products do you put where. And then lastly, related to that is advertising effectiveness and spend. And this is becoming a really big topic on a number of larger marketplaces globally. And certainly a lot of sellers find themselves spending a lot of advertising dollars through, sponsored search or headline search, whatever that might be, upfront in order to establish themselves. Now, it's very easy to sort of, blow through 20, 50, $100,000 of spend without getting a result. So, I'd encourage you to really make sure you've got some really good tools in place to understand, how advertising is performing, what ROI you're getting on it, and, allowing you to fine tune so that, yes, you may have to invest a lot up front, but actually you're building an asset, you're getting a return in the medium term from that spend.
No, thank you, Paul. Seller health sounds spot on. Not too different to real life, making sure you're on top of it. Less than 5 minutes to go. Apurva, if I can pivot to you. You've spoken about challenges, but maybe I was curious to hear perhaps how Sendle can help overcome a few of those, in particular to both domestic and international.
Sure. Yeah. Look, as I said earlier, one of the big pieces Sendle does really well is, we've kind of built shipping primarily focused. We build a shipping business primarily focused on e-commerce and the SMBs, right? Straight off the bat, you get a bunch of integrations, especially deep integrations into partners like eBay. There are partners like Etsy and all other major global leading marketplaces. Sendle, presently operates both in Australia. We are quite deep here, and we have a much deep network here. And at the same time, we can ship from anywhere within the US to kind of anywhere within the US, right? So with Sendle, a small business gets the ability to be able to scale in multiple markets and soon to be added, new markets to be added, right? So one of the things that allows merchants who use Sendle to do is, if you're an Aussie merchant, sign up for Sendle, you can get, significantly discounted rates to ship from Australia to anywhere in the world. That allows you to get a very good visibility into your ship costs and your end-to-end door-to-door ship cost to sell not just domestically, but also on, to some of the key international markets. That's one of the biggest pitfalls, actually, and one of the hardest things that people find when they're starting to think of selling internationally, because of the lack of flat rate pricing. Merchants are often having to grapple with very complicated, rate cards that come from some of the traditional carriers. And for small businesses, a lot of them do not have PhD in your supply chain and really understanding those numbers. So at best, all they need to do is look at a simple flat rate pricing, bake that into their cost of shipping to, let's say, from Australia to China or Australia to the US, and that becomes their net landed cost. Really understanding the policy of the marketplaces that they're working with. So for instance, if you have flat rate shipping, if you understand your total cost, you can actually list items with free shipping with your pricing baked into it. And that allows for much higher sales conversions on some of the big, some of the big platforms. And of course, the knock-on effect that comes with better ratings, because in all marketplaces, the better you're rated as a shipper allows your products and your listings to show up higher in some way, shape, and form. You get a much better chance of converting. And the last point I just want to quickly make, Remy, is fraud. One of the things I think shipping plays a big role on marketplace is to protect sellers from fraud. Once you have a fully tracked end-to-end parcel delivery service, you are able to actually take up cases of fraud where buyers are claiming that they haven't received an item when you've actually done the right thing as a sender. Take evidence of tracking information and allow the marketplace to do the right thing and not to penalize you. So look, there are so many different things in which Sendle can actually play a big role.
No, thank you, Purva. And gosh, there's so much to discuss. I can't believe we're actually already hit time. It is now 45 minutes. Our time is up. I guess the last question I had, it kind of answers itself, which was, do marketplaces, do you think we'll continue to sell on marketplaces in the future? And I think that's a resounding yes. Thumbs up across the board. The growth continues. It's a strategy. You should be part of it if you're not already. So I guess I have to wrap up. I'm sorry, folks, but I'd like to say a massive thank you to everyone, to Darren, to Frank, to Paul, to Apurva. I think we've shared their contact details. You can find them on LinkedIn. But I'd like to give a virtual round of applause to our panelists for giving up their time. It's 6:45 here in Australia, which I think means it's time for a beer. Maybe not in other parts of the world. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. It's been a fantastic discussion, and I encourage you to check out some other sessions that are happening throughout the day. Thanks again to our panelists, and have a great day.
Thank you, Remy.
Thank you, Remy.
Thanks, Remy.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. I think it's done.
Everyone else, the others have gone? Have they?
I think so. We might still be online. Thanks, Paul, anyway. Let's just see. I think it's closed. I'm not too sure, though. All right. Okay, it's still on. All right, Paul, I'll give you a call.